The narrative surrounding Black hair hasn't always been a celebratory one. In fact, Black women and girls have faced hair discrimination everywhere, from elementary school to the workplace, from high school and professional sports to the Olympics. Today's guest, best-selling children's book author and speaker, writes stories that celebrate all colors. And in her latest offering, she flips this harmful narrative surrounding Black hair by telling a beautiful story of self-love, affirmation, and God's love for his unique creations. All that and more up next. Welcome to the Glamazon Mom Podcast. This is a space to glean, educate, share, and grow. And each week we explore our journey in motherhood, chat and chew the fat with experts in the field and like-minded moms. So let's get into the conversation. I'm your host, Ebony Funderburk. She's a best-selling children's book author, a speaker, and has been heralded as a bridge builder. Please welcome to the Glamazon Mom Podcast, author Dorena Williamson.
I am so grateful to be on with you, friend.
We have both known each other for almost 2 decades.
Yes. Ooh, but we're not getting old. We're not getting old.
Oh, I'm getting old. I'm starting to feel it. Okay. But you actually not only have the pleasure of being a friend and a dear sister, I actually consider you my big sister, but you and your husband are my pastors. And so I am so grateful to have been able to sit and grow and glean under the both of you, what you guys have contributed to my life and to the lives of my kids. And I always talk about up here, it takes a village, and you are definitely a part of the village.
Amen, sister. Well, I've received that. The big sister part I'm going to take spiritually. Again, I'm not confessing anything about age today. It's just one of those days.
Right.
It's all good. It's all good.
Again, pastor, someone that I've seen for 2 decades, have watched you and your family grow. Because when I first met you, you were actually pregnant with your 4th child.
Right.
I never would have thought that you even had a passion or a heart writing children's books. And here we are, you're a best-selling children's book author, and you've already released 3 books, you've got a new book, and I've got to start with the question, how, why, where, when? How did this become a passion of yours that you branched out and you launched out into the deep and decided to do?
Well, you are absolutely right. This was not something I would have seen for myself. And that was really part of the challenge, Ebony, because this was not a lifelong aspiration. This was not a bucket list item to check off. This is not what I went to college for. My degree was in psychology. And so God really began planting some seeds of thought back in 2014, 2015, as we had watched Trayvon Martin's life be taken senselessly and had mourned and grieved as the Black community often does, just collectively watching these precious image bearers of all ages be taken from us in senseless ways. And as I looked to the church community, I saw our white brothers and sisters still using the same lame colorblind rhetoric, and it had always irritated me and frustrated me, but it began to agitate me. No, I wanted to take them and say, no, this is not how we deal with racism in this country by wiping it away into colorblind land. And so it was agitating to my heart as a mom. And then at the same time, I was being inspired by things I saw in mainstream culture where Mattel, the maker of Barbie, and where American Girl were putting out doll lines that had darker skin toned beauties for our girls. And you and I both have girls. So, even though my daughter had outgrown those toys by then, I appreciated and was inspired to see the intentionality to say, let's give our babies some toys that give them even better reflections of their beauty. And so all that kind of came together, and God started planting story seeds during a really difficult ministry season where there was a lot of darkness. And I just was asking God some hard questions. And he began to answer my cries with seeds of thought. And I wrote them in my journal thinking I might start blogging because that was kind of that was the way, that was the thing that people used to communicate. And I thought maybe I'll start blogging. And instead, God kept giving me these ideas and I started seeing the beginnings of a story. And I kind of launched into this private, quiet season of Googling and learning, how do I take my thoughts and put them into a story form? And am I really allowed to be an author? Because I didn't get a degree in journalism or in English or in all the things I thought you had to do to become an author. Mm-hmm. And God just kept confirming that this was something he was calling me to, that he would be faithful. And so I just spent those quiet years, being pruned and planting seeds and knocking on doors. And in God's providential time, he opened up opportunity to write the 3 books, Colorful, Thoughtful, and Graceful. And then after a pause season, then he opened up new doors to the 2 latest books that have come out. So I'm super excited and continue to be humbled that I get to join the good work he's doing.
And I have to apologize because I think I said 3 books, but you have 5 books, including the one that you just released, and that is amazing.
It really is amazing. And I have to stop sometimes and count myself like, wait, how many books have I published? Like what? Kind of like with your kids, like, wait, who are you? What's your name again?
Right.
Oh, okay.
So let me ask you this, because you mentioned how you started getting agitated. And I feel like a lot of African-American parents probably did during this season when the response, and I'll give some leniency to our white brothers and sisters who may have not known how to respond. So, the default was we're colorblind, which for us was not helpful. What were those conversations like with your friends, your colleagues, church members, whose response was that?
Well, let me start with the remnant who did do what I felt was helpful, which was to listen and to lament with us, even if it meant saying, I don't know what to say, but I just want you to know that I'm sorry or I'm here. And I think that applies across the board as we walk in community with people. We may not all be able to understand and share the same kinds of pain, but it's still helpful to say, I see you, or I see that there's pain and I'm sorry. Even if it's, like I said, to say, I don't know what to say. But what wasn't helpful was for the majority of people who would say things that belittled our experience or belittled the pain because Trayvon was not my son. And they would say things like, well, your son obeys the law, or your kid would not. And it was, like, okay, do I slap them? That's what my flesh wants to do. That would not be spiritual. That would not be helpful. But I want to just respond. And I'm sure I did sometimes respond in ways that just lashed out, because it was like, you're triggering me. You're mocking my pain. You're belittling my pain. And you are accusing or validating the harmful and horrible things that are happening to fellow image bearers. Like, you've missed that. You've missed that we share humanity. You've missed the mourning to jump to politicizing, to making it less horrific than it actually was. And I think a lot of people just skipped over all of that and just went to those defaults of, well, we don't see color, or this is how we're raising our kids to be a part of the solution, is by teaching them not to see color. So, some of the conversations were really hard. I had to learn to steward my energy online. And those were good lessons for me, because I needed to not spend all my time answering foolish people, to be honest, people who really didn't care, who just wanted to further frustrate and agitate me and weren't really wanting to listen and learn. And as a leader, you have to learn when to engage and when to say, you know what, I'm not even going to respond to that. And I'm going to steward my energy for the things that God has called me to do.
Well, then you go on to write books like Colorful and Thoughtful and Graceful. What were you trying to accomplish in these writings? And why kids?
Well, one of the things that I saw as a mom was that parents were ill-equipped to have these important conversations. And
yes.
I would say in the Black community, there were some conversations that were pertinent to us. Certainly, we weren't teaching our kids to be colorblind. We were affirming the beauty of how God made them in a world that we knew was not going to give them that affirmation.
Right.
But still, across the board, across humanity, there are important and relevant conversations that we need to be having with our kids. I didn't really begin having in-depth conversations about disability and about kids with special needs until either they were part of my kids' school community. And certainly once God gifted our family with my nephew who has Down syndrome, then there were things that I learned because now I'm proximate. Now it's affected me personally. So there are ways that we begin to grow when our proximity changes and we make those choices, or they are made for us because how our families are growing. And so, thoughtful was that response. Hey, let's engage children who are going, they're going to school with classmates who might think differently. Their bodies might work differently. It's not the olden days where they would sort of segregate kids with special needs or diminish their life potential because of those challenges. And so kids never had the opportunity to engage. And when they would see someone, they just spoke out because it was unusual and because they didn't know what to do with that difference, So in that aspect, schools have really grown in offering, those inclusive environments. But I just saw that so many kids are repeating and perpetuating harmful things because that's all that's being handed to them. And I thought, if we can hand them better tools, if we can give them some language, if we can give them imagery and lessons in a fun way, in a way that's going to capture their imaginations, but shape their hearts. And as a bonus, it's going to also shape the adults who are going to read alongside of them. And so I wish I could say it was my idea to go into picture books, but the first story that God gave me was a children's story. And now it's just become my love. And I feel really passionate about engaging children because you get the adults as a bonus when you engage those kids, especially the pre-readers. Their siblings, their grandparents are reading it with them. So they are grappling with the same messages. And that's exactly where God has called me to be.
I love that. What impact do you feel like representation in children's literature has on our society as a whole?
Oh, well, first for our kids, it's well documented that our children have been severely underrepresented in publishing. White children get the most representation. Up to 5 years ago, it was like over 80% of publishing featured, white children. And then the next largest category was animals. So you go from white children to animals, and then you get to Black children, and then Asian, Pacific Islander, and Indigenous, and Latinx, they kind of get like 1 or 2%,
So we can't even get above the animals here.
No. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Amazing.
And hey, my son loved him some Winnie the Pooh. And, we love
As did I. Did I.
Look, we're not hating on the animals, but we're just
we
saying,
love Winnie the Pooh, but still, right.
When you look at the representation, it's like, okay, why, what is that? What does that say about value and about worth? And that's why I'm so passionate and so joyful that I have the opportunity to be a part of helping to increase those statistics for our kids first, so that when they look at a book like Crowned with Glory, that new release that features a Black girl with joy, with big curly hair, looking up at the sky. And it's a reminder to children that there is joy and that there is celebration in the way that God made them. For those babies, that is just the most precious thing because they haven't had as many literary mirrors where they get to look at the book and see themselves. So when I hear them say, she looks like me, even when I hear women our age, Ebony, because I've gotten probably more feedback from women about the impact of this book, this children's book, than how it's impacting children. And I know it's impacting children, but it's so precious to me that adult Black women are saying, this book made me cry. Like, I had a moment when I read this because I needed to see. I didn't see this growing up, so it's taken me back to a childhood. So the impact is powerful for our kids, unapologetically, because I'm a Black woman. So seeing the joy and the beauty that it's shaping for our kids brings me joy. But also, it's giving a literary window for all kids to see, in my other books, especially where the covers do feature, multiculturalism, showing different children together, showing the beauty and power of community, which is also a powerful message that transcends, all people groups. It's universal. And that's where, people who don't share our faith can also grasp the universal message of the power of community, the power of family, the power of faith, the power of education, and having these wonderful, teachable conversations with kids that we all do every day.
I love how you talk about the impact that Crowned with Glory had on, or is having on, Black women who are reading this with their children, because hair is such a place of contention for us